I have a fairly standard loadout here for pitch dark, just a water pistol, grabby hand, C4. You will need either the blast arm or an explosive or just some kind of weapon in order to complete this mission. It's not an option. This is the first mission that takes place on the Angola-Zaire border map instead of Afghanistan. So the setting is a little different, the enemies are a little different, and this is also the point where the game does step it up a little bit. There tend to be more enemies, they tend to be more difficult and perceptive, and you'll see this again on your return to Afghanistan, but it happens most noticeably around this time in the game, when you get access to the second area. This is also the only helicopter ride in the game, I think, that you cannot skip. You might also not be able to skip episode 30, even with Infinite Heaven, because it's considered story important to the point where they just won't let you disable it. You can't also start this mission on land. The game doesn't allow it. So we're going to head to Waliyamasa, which is just a village. We don't need to stay here very long. In this mission, you're only supposed to sneak through it to get to the oil field, which is somewhere to the northeast. However, we don't even need to sneak through it exactly, because there's the mailing pad. Now, there is one guy there, and the guy in the tower could potentially see you, and you have to make sure no one's paying attention to you when you attempt to mail yourself, because if anyone's aware of you, or there's a caution or higher alert, you will not be able to mail yourself around. So that's something to keep in mind. My camo was not ideal for that area either. As a result, I need to make sure that I'm not seen until I get to the oil field where the camo is more matching. In this case, I'm wearing steel gray again, but again, it can be any metal concrete camo, but as you can see, the oil field is almost entirely concrete with some metal, so perfect camo for here. Although, with any luck, we won't be using it too much. We'll spend a lot of time crawling, but we're also going to spend some time clearing ourselves a path. Now, this mission has two objectives. There is a computer inside the main oil field building that we need to turn off, and there is also an oily water separator tank, which you can actually see there, marked 153 meters, it's red. But first, we're going to need to take care of some guys. Specifically, I want to get some of these guys on the right side, just because of the nature of where you can access the computer and the oily water separator tank. It's much easier if I'm clearing out this right side. Now, it doesn't make the escape easier, but a number of things will go wrong regardless, so... the main problem with this mission, so to speak, is that whatever you do, there's going to be a caution alert unless you completely capture the entire airfield, and then maybe there wouldn't be, but there will still be reinforcements that show up. That's because as soon as you disable the oily water separator tank, it will be very noisy, very violent, and there's really no way around it. As a result, a caution alert is pretty much guaranteed on your escape, so the more people you take out, the easier that is, but at the same time, you don't want to trigger a caution alert prematurely if you can help it, simply because this oil field is very wide open. There are some buildings and things like these containers that I'm not going to be able to fold in for cover, but otherwise, it's not a lot of cover. It's broad daylight. It's like early morning right now, so there's plenty of light. Enemies have much better vision. I think they intentionally gimp their vision a little bit in the early Afghanistan missions because they're much sharper-eyed once you get to this point. The camo gives you about a 45-meter detection radius, and sometimes I guess it causes brief glimpses to make them lose interest in you, but it's not that much in the end. You can definitely be seen from pretty far away in the daylight, even with matching camo, but it helps quite a bit, especially when you're crouched. So staying crouched is ideal. Occasionally the game will glitch out when you go over a rough terrain or something and force you to stand up, which is not ideal, but either way. I don't think the camo has much of an effect on standing up. When you're standing up, within about 70 to 75 meters, enemies will be able to see you, and they can alarm on you relatively far away while you're standing. It's only when you're crouching or prone that they have to get really close. And again, nighttime helps, but not always. Now I wanted to get this guy, but he's kind of far away, so I'm going to try throwing some magazines here. Magazines seem to have the same detection radius for sound as a knock, so about 14 to 15 meters. The problem is that it's not really obvious when you're knocking. It's obvious how far away somebody is because their mark will tell you. When you're throwing a magazine, though, you don't really know where you're throwing it to, and you don't really necessarily know how far away it was from the enemy you threw it at. Now, there's no harm in throwing a magazine if you miss, because no one will hear it, and they will ignore the magazine on the ground, so it's not a big deal. But you want to, if at all possible, avoid doing too many distractions too close together, because sometimes that will make the enemy call into CP, because they're concerned about the weird noise they've been hearing, and that they're going to check it out, which means that they have to check back in, which means that if they don't check back in, CP will get annoyed, that sort of thing. So you do want to be careful with that. It's unfortunate that I have to knock so many people out, but sometimes missions are just not super accommodating of this sort of run. Now, of course, it is possible to perfectly stealth something in broad daylight. People do it all the time. But I'm not quite that good. And with the deployment restrictions, I have fewer options in terms of just things that can make things a little bit easier. That said, I'm sure you can do this mission, no traces, broad daylight, with only the blast arm and no other equipment. But you would need the blast arm for this one if you wanted to get no traces. That's because the oily water separator tank, which again should be over there on the right, it's red, as we are up and over in this area, there it is. That can only be destroyed by either significant penetrating damage, like an anti-material rifle or something, or explosive damage, like a rocket or C4, which is what the game recommends, and what we're going to be using. You can also get it to blow up with hand grenades and the blast arm, so it's not perfect, but is workable. But because of that, if you come in here unarmed with nothing, and you don't pick anything up to help you out, there will be no way to actually destroy that tank. You can't just shoot it with small arms. Tranquilizer bullets will do nothing to it. There's no alternate means of shutting it down. You have to physically destroy it, which means you gotta do something. Now, there are other ways that you could potentially do it, like you could call in an artillery strike from Mother Base, but by doing that, you would rank restrict yourself, so if you're going for S rank, that's not really an option. There's a number of guys that I know are down here, but sometimes it can be a little difficult to mark them. The thing about using the binoculars to mark is it's actually slower and less sensitive than marking by using the normal zoom, which I'm not sure exactly what button that is for most people. I think it's you hold in the stance change button, whatever that is on your controller or keyboard. I use the keyboard, so for me it's bound to a mouse button. But the only disadvantage to the manual zooming, which picks people up faster, marks them faster, it doesn't tell you their stats, but who cares? The only disadvantage to it is it has much less range than the binoculars. It has, I think, less range than the first level of zoom, and when you zoom in all the way with binoculars, you can mark from much further away. So there is actually some interesting trade-off there. I've kind of become accustomed to using the binoculars to train myself to use them, and it's better to train yourself not to use them too much, because you can get marks off faster, and if that's your goal, it's very helpful. Anyway, just kind of grabbing all these people. There are more patrols that kind of go through this area than I figured. The patrols are more overlapping than expected, which I think is good in terms of making the mission more challenging. It's just surprising because I didn't have a lot of experience with this mission. It's been a while. So there will be actually one more guy who comes over into this area but for now I'm gonna move on and deal with this guy who's guarding the separator tank switch, or the power shutdown switch, whatever it's called. It's usually pretty safe to leave him here, but there's a chance that someone sees his body from a distance and becomes interested, because those guys are not as far away as they appear. As you can see from the mark, they're only about 45 meters away, which is, as I mentioned, the crouching detection radius even in matching camo, so let's move this guy inside, and I'll find him. And here, if you see that guy who was 37 meters away on the mark, he's actually noticing the guys who are held up. So I gotta dive out the window here and deal with him before causing me any troubles. And I'll hold him up, and I think that's everybody who actually comes through this area. So 2 or 3 guys I wasn't expecting, but now they are all held up. So they'll stay that way even after we destroy the separator tank, because that just causes a caution alert. And caution alerts don't cause held up people to stand up, only combat alerts. You can use that little jump there. It's not easy to pull off just because you have to be dealing with some momentum. So that first time I tried it, he just vaulted over the railing, and I had to climb back up and try again. Whatever the case, we've got to get to the separator tank, and that's one of the reasons why I cleared this route as well. It's easier to get to the separator tank from here. Unfortunately, I figured while crouching I would be in better shape here, but... And, you know, I even ran there for a bit. I was feeling so confident. But then I did get a brief glance, and that's going to be annoying. As you can see, that guy was probably at exactly 45 meters when he actually caught sight of me and then lost sight of me. So he'll be a little interested in a moment, but what he's going to do exactly, I'm not sure. So I end up pausing here for a second just to see what he does, so that I don't get surprised by anything. There's only one guy who patrols under this area, but the guys above can see you through the floor, so that's what that was. Caused me some difficulties there. As a result of all these little mess-ups, there's been a caution, went out prematurely. It's not a big deal because I'm close to the separator tank, and when I destroy the separator tank, it would cause a caution alert anyway. So at this point, it's probably for the best just to go ahead and proceed to the mission objective, which is up here. So again, you just need some kind of explosive damage to destroy the separator tank. It doesn't take a lot, usually like one rocket can do it, so if you wanted to do this from far away, this tank's a big target, it's easy to do. I'm just going to plant one C4.
Don't set it off until you're at a safe distance.
And head down here. Now to prevent this guy from dying in the explosion, I think his body's in a safe spot where he's not going to die, but I'm going to go ahead and pick him up and just haul him with me along the way for what I like to call soldier camo, which is a feature that's kind of odd, and it's apparently if you're carrying a guard like that, then you can actually get a small bonus to your camo. Enemies, for whatever reason, just kind of can't distinguish between you carrying a guy that they work with and the guy that they work with. So they'll kind of see his body and think he's just another guard. It's not much of a camo bonus. I think it's only like maybe like 3 to 5 meters of extra detection and slightly slower acquisition, but it's a minor help. Supposedly it can be very useful on FOBs. I've seen some videos and stuff of people using it to carry a guard around, and it makes it a little easier to bamboozle everybody, but I'm not sure how effective it really is in practice. Nevertheless, we need to get this guy safely out of the way anyway. Because of the caution alert, the guys near the tank are also leaving, although they're usually never in danger anyway. So we've just got this one guy who's between us and the escape. So the caution alert actually sort of worked in our favor. It drew everybody who was over here. There were like 3 or 4 guys to patrol in this area. It lowered it down to just this one guy, because the rest of them all went towards the separator tank where they last saw me. So that's actually kind of good. And again, that's one of the reasons why a caution alert can sometimes work in your favor if you get spotted at the right place. See, there's no guard up in the guard tower there. I think he came down, which makes my life easier. So all we have to do is evacuate the oil field. Now you'll notice I haven't destroyed the separator tank, and that's because of a weird quirk with this mission that's actually kind of annoying. When you destroy the separator tank, it starts a cutscene, and when the cutscene finishes, the game moves you back to your last checkpoint location, which for most people is actually going to be inside the oil field. So like if I did it now, it would yank me all the way back into, I think, the pump switch check, or the pump switch room. But because I hit a checkpoint there, when I actually detonate the C4, it will blow up the tank, start the cutscene, and then it should, if I did it correctly, pull me to where I actually was instead of somewhere where I was 10-15 minutes ago when the last checkpoint hit. The reason why that can get you is because once you're inside the oil field, you're not going to run into a lot of checkpoints, so it can easily kind of screw you over and make it difficult to escape, but because I went ahead and was patient on it and just waited, it's fine. So all we have to do is ride out of the hot zone, and we're good.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.